Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Today on the show, I wanted to talk a little bit about how our collections can not only be something that we collect and build and complete, but they're also pieces of our own story and connections to our own story. And this piece in particular that I'm going to share today is something that maybe 99% of the population would have walked past without picking up. But for me, it was something that really resonated with my own story and was something that I wanted to own and have a part of my collection here at my studio. And it's not a music item, it's actually a sports item, and this is something to do with a story that starts a long time ago. So let's get into it. So in the 1980s, both my dad and my grandfather were big Toronto Argonaut fans, which is a Canadian Football League team here in Canada. And we used to go to a lot of games at Exhibition Stadium in Toronto and see the Argos play. And then eventually, my dad got season tickets in '89 at the Sky Dome, the new Sky Dome where the Blue Jays had moved to, and the Argos were playing there. And in those days, the Argos used to draw pretty well and get a good crowd in. And we were all football fans, and we would go watch the games, and I'd get memorabilia and things signed and autographed and that sort of thing, which I still have, and some of these items I've had signed for ages that are still in my collection. But it was always a cool thing to go see a football game and to see some of these players and things like that in Canada. And around maybe I can't quite remember the year when this happened, but in the 90s, the Argos landed Rocket Ismail, which was a big deal to get him to come to the league and to be in the Canadian Football League. So that was a big deal to see the Rocket as well. So fast forward to high school. I'm going into grade 9, and by grade 9, you're a little bit apprehensive to enter a high school for the first time, and you're overwhelmed with the whole thing as well, just to be that whole first year in high school. It becomes a big deal. And I was in a gym class at the time, and our teacher was to be this gentleman by the name of Lynn Bottoms. And we never met him or knew anything about him, but when we walked onto the field the first day of class, there he was, and he was a senior citizen standing with a cane. And we thought, this is our gym teacher. This is interesting. This is going to be different. And he was sort of kind of half John Wayne, tough as nails, just a guy you didn't want to mess around with. But he also had this side that he loved to joke around with the kids, and it was a really fun experience having him as a teacher. And everybody can relate to teachers in their life that really mattered and took the time to get to know you and to be something that when people grow up, they remember. And myself as a music teacher, I try to do those things as well, where my students, after they're maybe no longer taking lessons from me, there's still people that I see around town and have good memories of being here and that kind of thing. So he was one of those teachers that early on in my high school career I certainly remember, and he always treated me very well. So one day I went home and was just talking about, stuff at school, and my dad and my grandfather were talking, and they said, he used to play for the Argos, and I had no idea. I didn't know he was a football player. Made sense, for sure. And I thought, wow, I'm going to take my Argos yearbook in and just see if he'd sign the back. I had some other autographs in there already. And so I showed it to him, and he was quite chuffed that I brought that in, and he signed it for me, and he had never mentioned to the class that he played professional football, so it was a big deal, I think, for him just to be acknowledged. And certainly a lot of guys in the class took note and were pretty interested, and so I think that whole class was spent asking questions about his football career and how that used to look and things like that, because he played quite a while ago. But he played in an era where you had to be pretty tough to be a football player, and he certainly was. And he had these great gnarled hands that were just, he looked like he was the type of guy that probably hadn't worn a glove in his life, out shoveling snow barehanded, and just, he was that type of guy. Real tough guy. And was very good about talking to us about football and everything else, and he was walking with a cane because he'd blown out his knee so badly playing football that he could hardly walk anymore. But it was great. So that item had been in my collection since the mid-90s, and it was something that I was so happy that I'd had, and that I'd actually asked him to sign and to have that memento. So I didn't ever get rid of it. It was in my collection, and just so happens in the last little while I found something and added it to it. So let me tell you about that right now. So I was at a sports show not too long ago and was looking through a box of old Canadian Football League memorabilia and sports cards and things like that, and I came across a Lynn Bottoms, and I couldn't believe it, and I just was so happy to find that card, just something so cool. And it really related to me. And as I say, most of the people there wouldn't know who that was or what that was or anything like that. But it was a nice old vintage card of him, and I thought that would be a great thing to put with my autograph, and just as a memory of something that happened along the way for me. So I picked that up. It's a piece in the collection that's not worth anything, but it's worth something to me. And it certainly had a great story for me to have that piece in my collection. So I know many of you probably have things in your collections too that are kind of very personal, and they don't really have monetary value, but they sure have a lot of nostalgia and kind of a story to tell in its own right. And I think collectibles, I'm going to do a video on this coming up. I think collectibles are shifting towards items that tell stories and that have provenance, and there's a history to them, and there's something about that particular item that can kind of talk about its journey, and for me this one ties in really well with that, because I knew the man personally, and was really grateful to have him as a teacher, and it was pretty cool to connect those things all these years later, after the fact. And unfortunately he's passed on now, but was a remarkable human being, and each piece has a story to tell, has a history to it, and it's great to tie that in. So wanted to show that on the channel today, and many of you probably won't care about that at all and will unsubscribe and all that other stuff, but I'd like to share it and kind of keep documenting everything in this room, what's in here, and that's just one of the things I wanted to make sure I had documented. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Keep on collecting, and we'll be back with more stuff soon.